Hello friends, welcome to Premier UPSC IAS. So continuing with the revision series for prelims 2023, today we are going to cover the modern history part of the history. Almost every year, almost 7 to 8 questions are asked from the modern history, and the text of the modern history is so much vast. A lot of things has to be covered. But if we covered the important topics from the whole modern history book, then we will have higher chances of making that 7 to 8 questions correct answer. Okay, so let's discuss modern history. This is the complete modern history series for the revision of for prelims 2023. Moving on, so what this all we are going to discuss. See, rise of the 18th century states. Before starting the invasion of the British Empire and the East India Company, let's see what was the situation of the India and how those states were in what condition. Okay, so rise of 18th century states. Several states rose to power in India, coinciding with the declining phase of the Mughal power. Okay, that is post 707 till 1815, because there was a declining of Mughal power. A lot of several states came into the power. Okay, some of them had a regional character such as Hyderabad and harbored older local or regional tradition of state formation, whereas some others were states that had a more original character. They later ones have been the result of very specific processes that took place in the late 16th and 17th centuries. They were mostly ethnic or sectarian groups such as the Marathas and the Jats and the Sikhs. These groups came into power, which gave it the more original character. Okay, moving forward, but they all were engaged in mutual rivalry and conflict. So before the arrival of the Britishers, or before Britishers, there were French and Dutch also. So before the arrival of any foreigners, in order to colonize the subcontinent of India, there were different rising of small states, but they were engaged in mutual rivalry and conflicts, so, which prevented them from consolidating their interest and form an empire. So the whole big empire was unable to form because they were having their own individual mutual fights and disputes and conflicts. Okay, for legitimacy, they had no fear in accepting the symbolic hegemony of the Mughal emperor. Okay, which was so conveniently available in the long accepted authority of Mughal emperor. Okay, just for the sake of legitimacy only, they accepted the symbolic hegemony of Mughal emperor only, but they were actually, their intentions and their whole approach was to form their own small states. The weakening of the central authority of the Mughals also helped them, and this set in motion these new types of provincial kingdoms. Mughal court's only concern was to ensure the flow of the revenue from the provinces and the maintenance of the image of the imperial unity. So this was the only focus of Mughals, and slowly, the authority of the Mughal empire were also diminishing. Okay, the state was already undergoing disintegration, but the invasion by Nadir Shah, the ruler of Iran, further weakened the empire. So the whole Mughal state was already undergoing disintegration. There was a lot of problems. Okay, but added upon that one, the invasion by the Nadir Shah, the ruler of Iran, further weakened the empire. Nadir Shah's invasion. Okay, attracted by the stories of the fabulous wealth of India and news of the weakening of Mughal Empire, Nadir Shah marched on to Delhi, and the Mughal ruler Muhammad Shah was taken as a prisoner in 1739. See, dear friends, we are only going to cover important points of that topic. The whole story is so long, and the textbooks, the books which we standard books, they have a lot of content. So, but here we are only picking only very important points that will talk about such a topic, and that also has a high potential of getting questions from it, especially in prelims. So we are only covering those points. So Nadir Shah invaded because he was attracted by the stories of the fabulous wealth of India and news of the weakening of Mughal Empire. Nadir Shah marched on to Delhi, and the Mughal ruler Muhammad Shah was taken as a prisoner in 1739. Delhi was plundered and people were massacred in huge numbers. The royal treasury and other royal property were looted. It is estimated by the historians that Nadir Shah's total plunder amounted to about 70 crores of rupees. So this much huge royal property and the royal treasury was, plundered by Nadir Shah's invasion. He also took with him the famous Kohinoor diamond and the peacock throne of Shah Jahan. That is still under discussion now. Okay, moving on. Muhammad Shah was made to cede all the provinces of the empire west of the river Indus to Nadir Shah. So the Muhammad Shah of Mughal Empire, okay, he was forced to give all those states or small provinces of the Mughal Empire west of the river Indus to Nadir Shah. The invasion led to the loss of prestige of Mughal Emperor and exposed the wheel of imperial unity and made apparent the hidden weakness of the empire to the Maratha Sardars and foreign trading companies. The imperial finances became weak and affected the economic life of the people as the impoverished nobles began to oppress the peasantry to recover their lost fortunes. So, because of the plundering and looting of the Nadir Shah, the whole image and the picture and the royalty of the Mughal emperor was clearly seen by the people, and they felt that this Mughal emperor and the Mughal empire is so weak, and somehow by seeing the weakness of the Mughal Empire, lot of the Maratha Sardars and other foreign trading companies thought of taking this situation advantage. Okay, the whole imperial finances, so it became so weak that it affected the whole economic life of the people. Okay, moving forward, the loss of the areas to the west of the Indus and the Kabul opened the empire to the threat of the invasions from the northwest. So from the northwest, there were a lot of threats previously, but for the first time after the invasion of the Nadir Shah only, it became more vulnerable to the threats. The Marathas. So, seeing the situation, what did the Marathas do? Marathas emerged as superior power in the twilight of the Mughal Empire. We discussed in the previous session about the Maratha warrior clan was of the Bhonsles. Actually, this topic was discussed in the ancient history that I'll cover in the next video. Shivaji Bhonsle emerged as a powerful ruler. Okay. However, his successors weren't as able as him, Sambhaji and his younger brother Rajaram. Sambhaji's son Shahu was kept in captivity, and for a time it appeared that Maratha power was on the decline. But emergence of the Peshwa happened. But post the death of Aurangzeb, the recovery was effected and somewhat changed circumstances as Sahu was released from captivity. Sahu succeeded Raja Ram in 1708 and his regime lasted for 4 decades up to 1749. So Sahu's rule was marked by the rise of a lineage of Chitpavan Brahmins who became Peshwas. So basically, Peshwa is the term used for chief ministers. So they were basically Chitpavan Brahmins. So the lineage of these Chitpavan Brahmins came into rise after the Sahu's rule. Okay. They virtually came to control central authority in the Maratha state, and the Bhonsles were reduced to figureheads. Any only namesake heads. Okay, Balaji Vishwanath was the first prominent Peshwa who had helped Sahu in his rise to the power. Moving forward, Balaji Vishwanath was succeeded by his son Bajirao I 1720 and 1740. Balaji Vishwanath cultivated the Angria clan for controlling a fleet of vessels based in Colaba and other centers of the west coast. They had a strong navy. Sometimes the question could be asked directly about the clan and who cultivated the clan. That is Balaji Vishwanath. Okay. The Marathas navy challenged not only to the new English settlement of Bombay but also the Portuguese at Goa, Bassein, and Daman. So these Maratha had a strong navy not only at the west front, centers of the west coast, but also they challenged uh, the Portuguese, Bassein, and Daman and Goa ports. On the other hand, by the end of Maratha king Sahu's reign, powerful individual Maratha kingdoms emerged. Of these, the most important were Gaikwads, Scindias, and the Holkards. So, after the Sahu's rule, the whole Maratha empire was also uh, disintegrated into small regional powers. Those amongst those, the important one are Gaikwads, the Scindias, and the Holkards. Apart from the Bhonsle family that relocated to Kolhapur and Nagpur, the main power though remained in the Deccan heartland at Satara. Moving on. Chowth and Sardeshmukhi. Balaji Vishwanath and his son Baji Rao I bureaucratized the Maratha state and systematized the practice of tribute gathering from Mughal territories. Tribute gathering under the heads of Sardesh Mukhi and Chowth. What is those? Chowth was equal to one-fourth, that is 25% of the produce that was to be paid to Jagirdars of the Maratha Empire from other state, that is called as Chowth. You have to remember because direct questions are asked from this modern history. The term from the modern history Chowth refers to. They'll ask the definition. So that this is very important. Chowth is equal to one-fourth, that is 25% of the produce that was to be paid to Jagirdars of the Maratha Empire. The Maratha army would in turn promise non-aggression against the enemy state. What is Sardeshmukhi? Sardeshmukhi was an additional 10% tax levied upon the Chowth due to the king claiming hereditary rights upon the tax collection. For example, if there is any another enemy state or if there is any king who is claiming the hereditary rights, now for them, there was an additional 10% tax along with the chowth. Okay, so that was called as Sardeshmukhi. Moving on. The Sardeshmukhi and the one-third of the Chowth went to the king's treasury, whereas within their own state they had consolidated methods of assessment and collection of land revenue on the lines of Mughals. It means as same as Mughals. Even the terminology used in the documents of the Peshwa had Persian influence, which suggests a continuity between Mughal and Maratha revenue practices. So sometimes, direct statements of the situation could be asked in question whether do you know the whole story or not in order to assess that one. Moving on. Third battle of Panipat. In the previous sessions, we have covered the first and second battle, but pertaining to the rise of the different empires before the invasions of the foreigners and the different trading companies, this third battle of Panipat is important. Baji Rao's son Balaji Baji Rao, popularly known as Nana Sahib, further increased the territory under the Maratha control by invading Punjab in 1758. This brought the Marathas into direct confrontation with the Durrani Empire of Ahmad Shah Abdali. So they too confronted. In 1759, he raised an army from the Pashtun tribes and made several gains against the smaller Maratha garrisons in Punjab, who Ahmad Shah Abdali. He then joined with his Indian allies, the Rohilla Afghans of the Gangetic Doab, forming a broad coalition against the Marathas. So Ahmad Shah Abdali, that is of the Durrani Empire, formed allies with the Rohilla Afghans of the Gangetic Doab against the Marathas. Moving forward, the Marathas, under the command of Sadashivarao Bhau, responded by gathering an army of between 45,000 to 60,000, along with the 2 lakh non-combatants, a number of whom were pilgrims desirous of making pilgrimages to Hindu holy sites in northern India. Both sides tried to get the Nawab of Awadh, Shujauddaulah, into their camp. It means that Abdali also from Durrani Empire, along with the allies, tried to get Shujauddaulah towards him, and Marathas also tried to get the Nawab of Awadh, Shujauddaulah, towards their side. But Shujauddaulah made the decision to join the Afghan Rohilla coalition, preferring to join what was perceived as the army of Islam. This was strategically a major loss for the Marathas since Shuja provided much needed finances for the long Afghan stay in the North India, who Shujauddaulah. They engaged in a 2-month long siege led by Abdali against the Marathas in the town of Panipat. Moving forward, during the siege, both sides tried to cut off the other's supplies, and Afghans succeeded to cut off almost all food supplies in the besieged Maratha camp. The forces led by Ahmad Shah Durrani came out victorious. It means Maratha lost because Ahmad Shah Durrani, Ahmad Shah Abdali, and Shujauddaulah, along with that Afghani tribes, they three were comparatively stronger because they had become allies. According to the single best eyewitness chronicle by Shujauddaulas Diwan Kashiraj, sometimes the chronicler, the writer of such incidents and the incident taking place in the emperor's name will be asked as the following question in prelims. So you should remember this point. So the chronicler was the Diwan Kashiraj. About 40,000 Maratha prisoners were slaughtered in cold blood the day after the battle. The result of the battle halted the Maratha advances in the north and destabilization of their territories for roughly 10 years. Okay, the result of this battle was Maratha became weak. But there are other results also, but they came as a long way consequences that we are going to see further. This period of 10 years is marked by the rule of Peshwa Madhav Rao, who is credited with the revival of the Maratha domination following the defeat at the Panipat. So even after the Panipat, the whole Maratha domination was revived because of the Peshwa Madhav Rao. Maratha Confederacy. Let's see. One by one, Bhonsles of Nagpur. While the Kolhapur Bhonsles claimed a status equal to that of the Satara Raja, the line at Nagpur was subordinate to the Satara rulers. So they were under the Sataras. Most important ruler of this line was Raghuji Bhonsle. He attacked Bengal and Bihar in 1740s and early 1750s. The relations between the Peshwas varied with every successor such as Janoji, Sabaji and Mudhoji. You need not to remember anything from this page. Let just in order to understand the whole story, we are going to read as of now. The Gaikwads of the Baroda. The Gaikwads were another important group who gathered prominence in 1720. They were subordinate to the Bhonsles, but their situation improved after the death of the Sahu. The expulsion of Mughal governor of the Gujarat province from his capital of Ahmedabad in 1752 helped in the rise of Gaikwads. They established their capital in Baroda. Fateh Singh, who ruled between 1771 and 1789, did not remain allied to the Peshwa and instead negotiated a settlement with the English East India Company. Okay, Fateh Singh, you should remember the situation here. Moving on. Thus, by 1800, the British started interfering in every matter and decided who would succeed among the Gaikwads. They eventually became subordinate rulers under the British in the 19th century. Who? The Gaikwads. Moving on. Forward. The Holkars of Indore. Okay, the rise in status and the riches of the Holkars was particularly rapid and marked. They had little political power initially. However, by 1730s, under the Malhar Rao Holkar, they consolidated their position. He got a huge share of Chowth collection in Malwa, eastern Gujarat, and Khandesh. From their capital at Indore, Malhar Rao and his successors controlled important trade routes and crucial trading center of Burhanpur. After Malhar Rao, his son's widow Ahilyabai Holkar ruled from 1765 to 1794 and brought Holkar's power to great glory. So this we are reading just to understand different small groups, okay, before and after the Maratha Empire. But from here, you can take one important aspect, how Ahilya Bai Holkar ruled and brought Holkar's power the great glory they had after the Malhar Rao. Okay, this could be used in mains examination to write, how women were also played a bigger role in different regions before the arrival of Britishers. Okay, moving on. The Scindias of Gwalior. The Scindias became prominent in the decades following the Third Battle of Panipat. They were based in central India, first at Ujjain and later ruled from Gwalior. M- Mahatji Scindia, who ruled between 1761 and to 94, consolidated the family's fortunes. He was an effective and innovative military commander and also employed a large number of European soldiers in his force. Under him, they managed to make substantial inroads into North India, taking advantage of the weakened rule due to Afghan attacks. Moving forward, during the reign of Shah Alam II, the Mughal king made him the deputy regent of his affairs in 1780s. The successors of the Mahadaji couldn't sustain the momentum. Daulat Rao's India, who ruled from 1794 to 1827, was defeated by the British and was forced to sign a treaty with them in 1803 to surrender his territories both to the north and to the west to the Britishers. Moving forward, Nawabs of Bengal. Murshid Quli Khan was appointed as the Diwan of Bengal by Aurangzeb. He became an independent ruler with the weakening of the central authority, but he regularly sent tribute to the Mughal emperor. The family of the Murshid Quli Khan was deposed by Alivardi Khan, and he made himself the Nawab of Bengal in 1739. So, Murshid Ali Khan, then came Alivardi Khan. Nawabs promoted agriculture, trade, and industry in Bengal, and they provided equal opportunities to both Hindus and Muslims. This is important. However, they couldn't visualize the long term implications of the presence of the European trading companies and neglected the military preparedness. In 1757, Siraj-ud-Dowlah, the successor of Ali Vardi Khan, fought the English East India Company at Plassey over the trading rights. This defeat paved the way for the subjugation of Bengal as well as India. So, this is important. The 1757, the Battle of Plassey. Okay. Nawabs of Awadh. The Mughal Suba of Awadh also saw independence ambitions of provincial governor Sadat Khan, also called as Burhan al-Mulk. He disciplined the local zamindars and raised a well-armed and well-trained army, and before his death he made the provincial head a hereditary position. His successor Safdarjung and Asaf ad-Dawla gave a long-term administrative stability to the position of the Nawab of Awadh. Faizabad and Lucknow became the cultural spheres of arts, literature, and crafts under them. The evolution of dance form of Kathak was also the outcome of cultural synthesis in the Awadh. This could be a question, okay? The evolution of the dance form of Kathak. Moving forward, the Sikhs of the Punjab. The Sikhs under the Banda Bahadur was suppressed by the British, but the Sikh resistance to Mughal authority couldn't be stopped. Amritsar became the center of Sikh activity because of its preeminence as a pilgrimage center. Kapoor Singh was the most prominent Sikh leaders of the time, consolidated a revenue cum military system. Who? Kapoor Singh. He consolidated a revenue and some military system. At the same time, some Sikh groups also started consolidating themselves as a political force and fought with the Mughal governors of Lahore Suba, first Abdul Samad Khan and then Zakaria Khan, who were trying to set up an independent power base for themselves in the region. Moving forward, unification of the Sikh Confederacy. In 1745, the balance of power shifted in favor of the Sikh leaders such as Jassa Singh Ahluwalia, who founded the Kingdom of Kapurthala. There was a number of Sikh leaders who created pockets of authority, and it was thus a feature of the 2 decades preceding Ahmad Shah Abdali's invasion of Punjab. Ahmad Shah's successor Taimur Shah, who ruled between 1772 to 93, recovered some of the territories and towns from Sikhs such as Multan. But post that, they had to deal with a confederation of about 60 Sikh chieftains. Maharaja Ranjit Singh. This is very important topic for prelims. One of the chiefs was Maharaja Ranjit Singh, who belonged to Sukar Chakia Misl. Eventually welded these principalities into a larger entity. He proclaimed the title Maharaja at the age of 21 and ruled for 4 decades from 1799 to 1839. At the time, the power of the English East India Company was growing in all parts of the country except for Punjab. He's built a superior military force by recruiting some European mercenaries and by the strategic location of the territories that he had inherited from his father. His rule represented the culmination of a century-long Sikh rebellion against the Mughal rule. So that is why Maharaja Ranjit Singh is important. Moving forward, He made Lahore his capital in 1799 and it gave him the control of the trade routes and allowed him to enhance his revenues. By the year 1809, he was the undisputed master of the most of the Punjab. After his death in 1839, within 10 years, British annexed the Punjab and some of his territories emerged as princely states under the British, such as Nabha and Patiala. Okay, Nabha and Patiala were basically the princely states of these Punjab by Ranjit Singh. He was popularly known as Sher-e-Punjab, that is the Lion of Punjab. Moving forward, Rajputana states. Jaipur, earlier called as Amber, was controlled by the Kachwaha clan, and in the early 18th century, the ruler Savai Jai Singh took steps to increase his power. The name of the ruler is important, that is Savai Jai Singh. Okay. So we were studying the ruler Savai Jai Singh. Okay, he arranged to have his assignment too close to his home territories and took rights on land revenue and gradually made permanent. He died in 1743 and Jaipur came to be named after him, who Savai Jai Singh, as he emerged as the single most important ruler in the region. However, most of the larger Rajput states were constantly involved in petty quarrels and civil wars such as Ajit Singh of Marwar was killed by his own son. A series of crop failures in 1750s and 60s adversely affected the agriculture and the period was marked by an economic depression resulting in a decline in the political power of Jaipur. Jaipur became vulnerable as the Marathas were expanding, especially Mahaji Sindhia in particular. The landlocked nature of these states and thus the lack of access to the sea greatly increased the vulnerability of the state, especially because the English East India Company itself was a maritime enterprise. So, this was all about Rajputana states. Moving forward, kingdoms in South. In the South, the states were aiming to consolidate their power by the use of access to sea and ports, especially Travancore in Kerala under the Marthandavarma and Ramavarma, and Mysore under the Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. The southern states rose to prominence in the latter half of the 18th century. Before that, the region was dominated by Muslim notables of the Mughals. Some of them were political heavyweights such as Nizam ul Mulk of Hyderabad and Sadullah Khan at Arcot. Moving forward, there was secession struggle at Arcot in the 1740s and the death of the Nizam ul Mulk in the 1750s, the power of Hyderabad also declined. They lost the control of the coastal districts and in this context, the new states were built elaborate and well organized kingdoms. Moving forward, the state of Travancore. Marthandavarma, who ruled between 1729 to 58, initiated measures to strengthen his authority, such as building a substantial standing army of 50,000, reduced the power of Nair aristocracy, fortified the northern limits of his kingdom at the so-called Travancore line, extended patronage to the Syrian Christians, a large trading community within his domains to limit the European involvement in the trade. All this was done by Marthandavarma of the state of Travancore. Monopolized the key commodities such as pepper and other goods and mandatory to have the license for trade. Martanda's successor Ramavarma ruled between 1758 to 98 for 40 years and continued policies in large measure. He was able to defend his kingdom successfully against a growing and powerful rival power, Mysore. Moving forward, the rise of Mysore. The Vodaya dynasty rulers Kandhirava Narasaraja and Chikkadevaraja built Mysore as an important state. However, the landlocked nature of the kingdom increased their vulnerability as they had to depend on trade and military supplies brought through the ports of the Indian east coast and ports had increasingly come under European control. However, steps were taken to change this situation. Hyder Ali, who was a cavalry commander, assumed effective power in the kingdom in 1761. and the Vodayards were reduced to figureheads. He displaced the powerful Kalale family of ministers. Hyder Ali and then his son Tipu Sultan in 1782 made attempts to consolidate Mysore and cover entire peninsular India. They were successful against the Kodavas of Coorg and conquered the coastal Karnataka and northern Kerala. This enabled Tipu to carry out diplomatic and commercial relations with the Middle East. They were unable to build an internal consensus and were dependent on migrants and the mercenaries. They were also resisted by local chiefs called polygars. Apart from that, Mysore faced a formidable English East India Company and Tipu was also finally killed in 1799 by the English forces. Let's see the economy of the 18th century. The 18th century was a period of political turmoil in India, as we have seen now the rise of the Marathas, the Sikhs of the Punjab, and the Rajputana states, and the other division of the Maratha. All this 18th century was political turmoil, where states were formed and dissolved in quick succession. There was hardly any substantial economic continuity between its earlier and later parts. The invasions by military forces of the Nadir Shah, then of Ahmed Shah Abdari, and finally the attacks by the Rohilla, who controlled Delhi in 1761 to 71, the city in a state of regular destruction. We have just now seen the invasions of these Nadir Shah and Ahmed Shah and Rohillas, okay, and it caused the dislocation of people, destruction of irrigation tanks, and led to forcible expropriation of cattle wealth. Delhi definitely had a gloomy period, but the same can't be held true for other centers in India, whether Trivandrum, Pune, Patna, or Jaipur. Some areas saw an agricultural decline because of the interstate warfare, such as the Punjab and the parts of the North India. There was no invasion for new agricultural methods, innovation, but the data of the Taksim papers used and compared with the Ain Akbari proves that it was not the lack of cultivable land but the lack of labor and peace which resulted in the declining of agricultural production and the fluctuation of the prices. Except for a major crisis between 1702 and 1704 in South India, the first 7 decades of the 18th century were remarkably free of famine for India. Moving forward, then in 1770 there was a great Bengal famine which perished an estimated one-third of the population. Another disastrous famine followed in North India in 1783. There were also excessive revenue demands which made the peasants' desertion a regular phenomenon, particularly in North India. The fragmented polity, however, did not hamper the development of inland trade in grain, cloth, and cattle. In contrast to the inland trade, the Indian shepherds and merchants involved in export trade declined due to the European advances. The port city of Surat, which was once glorious, lost its importance around the 1720. In the late 18th century, there was a resurgence of demand for Indian goods in Europe, West and Southeast Asia. But by now, European merchants and shippers had achieved dominance at the expense of Indians and took the bulk of profits. The colonial port cities like Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta took the place of old commercial centers of Surat, Masulipatam, and Dhaka that had been degenerated. What is the social life of 18th century? Let's see. The society retained the legacy of the previous century and was multi-layered on the basis of religion, region, tribe, language, class, and caste. Hundreds of new castes came up which was decided by birth, fixing the permanent place of the people in the social hierarchy. There was a prohibition on intercaste marriages and intercaste dining. Muslims were also influenced by the consideration sects. The Shias and the Sunnis had major religious differences. At the same time, the Irani, Afghani, Turani, and Hindustani Muslims had a lot of differences to stand apart from each other. There was a wide prevalence of Parda child marriages and sati system in some places such as Bengal and Rajasthan. A general lack of progressive ideas can be seen. Though elementary education was widespread, the mediums of higher education were Sanskrit and Persian only. The education excluded females and low caste people. The regional literature of Marathi, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Bengali, Odia, etc. flourished. Moving forward, advent of the Europes. Here we are going to study how the advent of Europe started. We have discussed the arrival of Portuguese in the previous class. Okay, here we shall discuss the arrival of the next three European powers such as the Dutch, the English, and the French.